Kaz Hammad, Australia's alleged tobacco kingpin, was once considered untouchable.
He thought because he was offshore, he was out of reach. Well, he wasn't.
I can't think of any other criminal currently in Australia who has a higher profile than Kaz Hammad.
Hammad had been living in Iraq and is now sitting in a jail cell after being taken into custody by local authorities. What is Kaz Hammad accused of?
I'm not using his name very deliberately, and nor the Australian Federal Police. The Police Commissioner made clear that he was our number one concern of anyone having an impact on Australia, and that the concern was in relation to organised crime.
In a statement, Iraq's Supreme Judicial Council made a series of allegations. The accused is one of the most dangerous wanted men in the world. He is responsible for importing large quantities of drugs into Iraq and Australia, as well as smuggling heroin. He is also involved with the most prominent organised crime gangs in Australia, Sydney, responsible for shootings, murders, kidnappings, violent assaults, extortion and drug imports. 7:30 understands Kaz Hammad was arrested by Iraqi police independently from Australian authorities, allegedly for crimes he committed in Iraq. Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke says the AFP shared information with the Iraqis in October.
It's not the end of a network, but when you say someone is your number one target in October and they're locked up in January, it's a reminder that, being overseas doesn't mean you're beyond reach of the work of the Australian Federal Police.
Hammad came to Australia as a teenager from Iraq with his family in the late 90s. Over the next 15 years, he transformed into a career criminal, surrounding himself with major underworld figures before being jailed for 8 years in 2015 over a heroin trafficking network. On his release in 2023, he was deported to the Middle East.
Somewhere along that process, he's decided to diversify into illicit tobacco, perhaps because it's a equally high profit and a much safer, lower risk crime type, and he's built a very large organisation in order to distribute his product.
Over the last 3 years, Victoria has seen a bloody underworld war over control of the black market, involving firebombings, extortion, daylight shootings and innocent deaths. Former AFP officer and illicit tobacco expert Rowan Pike says Kaz Hammad allegedly has had his hands on every level of the illicit tobacco pipeline.
It's alleged that he's actually helping produce illicit tobacco overseas with having a stake in certain tobacco factories. He then is able to transport that to Australia. He's able to smuggle it through the border, perhaps with the assistance of corrupted officers. He then distributes it and then also has control over a large number of the shops that are selling it to the consumers.
Last year, the AFP accused Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps of orchestrating the Adass Israel synagogue firebombing in Melbourne. It also named Hammad's organised crime networks as the alleged facilitators. Where does this individual sit in the pipeline from Iran and the firebombing?
I'm not going to go through all the intelligence, and I think you'd respect why. But we are talking about someone at the apex of a criminal network. At the apex of a criminal network. And people, in the way organised crime works, always try to, the higher up you are, try to have clean hands in different ways of different crimes. But for a whole process of organised crime in Australia, road after road after road has continued to lead back to one individual.
After the synagogue firebombing, the AFP started to weigh into this problem, not necessarily on the illicit tobacco front, but more so to target Kaz Hammad himself due to the alleged terrorist activity that he'd directed from overseas. So when the AFP came in, they also brought their international reach, their international cooperation to the table, and no doubt that's played a part in his arrest today.
Up to this point, Kaz Hammad's life in Iraq has been beyond the reach of Australian authorities.
It's believed that he's been living a life of luxury in a gated community, protected by family contacts in the government, plus also perhaps corrupted officials that he's used his vast wealth to corrupt.
Human rights lawyer Greg Barnes SC says Kaz Hammad's fate is right now outside of Australia's judicial system.
It's a matter for the Iraqi courts. These, of course, are all allegations. He's got a presumption of innocence. But the only point I'm making is that when it comes to serious allegations, then often it is more difficult to resist an extradition request.
Any decision on criminal charges in Australia or extradition is a decision for later. We deported him from Australia. I don't particularly want him here. I don't particularly want him here ever, but I do want him locked up.
We should be under no illusions that this is going to be the end of the problem. It may create a vacuum of leadership where some of his rivals might want to weigh back in and cause more violence that we've seen over the last 3 years.